Pride and Prejudice, a story of the simple times before things like futurism and advanced industry and Nickelodeon and DaBaby and hygiene? Yeah. There were definitely some flaws to English society at the time. Jane Austen knew that though, and she made it a point to address some of them in Pride and Prejudice, a cinematic, feminist, amazing effing masterpiece. If you haven't seen the 2005 film adaptation of Jane Austen's 1813 novel of the same name, you're missing out. For a refresher, here are some key elements of the film. There are two main characters, Elizabeth, or Lizzy Bennet, and Fitzwilliam Darcy, or Mr. Darcy as he's referred to in the film. For all intents and purposes, Lizzy is a girl boss. She's essentially the blueprint for I'm not like other girls. She loves to spend her time reading, loves walking instead of taking the carriage, and could not care less about her society's expectations that she was to marry a man she did not love. Mr. Darcy is the typical dumb but not actually dumb male in romance movies. He's just super awkward, and that kind of makes him seem emotionally incompetent, and if I dare, I'd even compare him to Edward Cullen. The remaining supporting characters are pretty fun too. Here's a couple. There's President Snow, Joanna Mason, Amy Dunn, her ex-boyfriend Simon Woods, and even one of Elon Musk's ex-wives. On to the smaller details of the film. Pride and Prejudice, on a basic level, follows the story of Lizzy navigating the big, bad world of English rank society and the journey of finding a husband in a world where if you didn't, you were kinda screwed. The story is the definition of a slow burn, enemies to lovers trope that a lot of movies still utilize today. Ben Solo and Rey Skywalker, Han Solo and Leia, Patrick Verona and Kat Stratford. Need I go on? Anyways, the main reason for the slow burn is because of the title. Lizzy has too much pride and Mr. Darcy has too much prejudice. They lack self-awareness, and for this reason, neither of them really become aware of their own flaws because they're too busy focusing on everyone else's. Hence, a really slow burn because they're both so, involved in their own worlds that they don't realize they like each other. Anyways, okay. Austen adds in some other obstacles that prolong the growth of their relationship, like Lizzy's cousin trying to marry her and Mr. Darcy's aunt trying to get Darcy to marry her daughter. And I'm not even going to go into detail on that stuff, but it definitely speaks volumes as to how relationships were structured at the time. Everything relied on rank and reputation. One of the best and my favorite things about Pride and Prejudice is how Lizzy Bennet is constructed as a protagonist. When someone thinks of a protagonist, they usually think of a character that is willing to go against the odds to help others, themselves, and the world. They advocate for some type of positive change. Lizzy Bennet really does do this. Despite societal expectations, or rather obligations, for women to assume a minimal role in society and marry the most wealthy, accomplished man they can find, she resists and instead insists that marriage and relationships must be founded upon love, friendship, and genuine affection. As a viewer, seeing Lizzy do this makes her look great because who would want to have to marry and fall around some random and usually super boring guy, right? But upon closer look, we find out that Lizzy's opinions can actually greatly affect her entire family and their well-being. We see the impact of reputation and an outsider's impact, so to say, when Lydia runs away to be with Mr. Wickham. Basically, the entire Bennet family could potentially lose everything just because Lydia didn't follow the standard way of marrying. Seeing Lydia's situation kind of makes you think, is Lizzy Bennet actually good? She's willing to sacrifice the well-being of her entire family in order to fulfill her own moral values, as we see when she denies Mr. Collins' marriage proposal. Lizzy's pride is also her downfall. She judges a person immediately and is extremely stubborn in changing her views on things. It is details like this that make Pride and Prejudice so perfect. It's representation of an imperfect and flawed society. Yes, Lizzy Bennet is inspiring as a female character for her willingness to be independent while living in a male-dominated world. And yes, Pride and Prejudice is this grand true love fairy tale, but it also depicts the harsh and inevitable obligations of old English society. Pride and Prejudice is arguably one of the most beautifully shot films ever. Each shot not only captures the beauty of the scenery and perhaps glorifies it because let's be real, things were kind of nasty back then, but they provide perfect context to the relationships between characters in the scene, where things are happening, and they add a certain elegance to the film. I mean, it seriously doesn't get better than this. One of the notable aspects of this film are the one-shots that are used. A perfect example of this is the scene with the Netherfield ball. There are some others, but the scene is really important in that it shows what the characters' intentions and thoughts are. I don't want to drag on about this one scene, but in it we can see that Mr. Darcy has a liking for Lizzy, and he notices that Miss Bennet is concerned for her daughter's relationship solely for profit, not really for her daughter's general happiness. Other details about the main characters that are helpful to see are also shown, and the impressiveness of the scene isn't really in what we are seeing, but how we are seeing it. The timing timing of the actors is and had to be perfect in order to make everything so seamless, and it is. The cinematography of this film also captures the emotions and environment of a scene very well. In several scenes where there is tension between characters, or a character is startled or unstable, there's a quick zoom effect that's used sometimes, and not only is this really visually pleasing, but it adds another dynamic to the scene and really helps to capture how the characters were feeling in that quick moment, and it really helps the viewers kind of relate to the character. Basically, this film is flawless. There's not a single scene where the film is lacking visually. Even during scenes where characters are having private conversations with one another, a new visual element is introduced. For example, when Jane and Lizzy in the beginning of the film are discussing the boys and they're laying in their bed underneath the sheets, this indicates their close relationship and willingness to reveal things to one another. When Lizzy is finding out about Mr. Darcy's big mistake about Jane during the church service, the shot is so close up on Lizzy's hyperfixation on Mr. Darcy. She was so focused that she wasn't even looking at the person she was talking to. These two scenes could have easily looked the same, because the same thing is pretty much happening. But instead, they're invitations to understand the character's emotions past the dialogue. Okay, it's time for a speed round where I'm gonna quickly name off some other aspects of the film that I really like, because I don't want this to drag on for too long. But as you might be able to guess, I love the performances given by the actors in this film. And before you say anything, I have not seen the other version with Colin Firth, and I just don't think it'd hit the same for me. Okay, the score is so good. I take walks in the morning to a hill near my house, and no joke, I listen to this score, and when I'm on the hill, I feel like Lizzy when she's on top of the world. You guys know the song if you guys are Pride and Prejudice fans. The soundtrack, the score, it's worth a listen on its own. It's really good, it's a lot of fun. Also, this movie is somehow super funny. Like, the humor can be really dry and clever, and it's delivered really well, and I think it makes the story that much more enjoyable, because it was like Jane Austen. I can just imagine she was like sitting, you know, in her room, like outside of her house or something, and she's just writing this absolute like crap on her society, and I don't know, I feel like she would have been such a fun person to talk to. Well, I obviously love Pride and Prejudice, and I think that you should too. This was my first time trying to make a video like this, and I'm not gonna lie, it took me a really long time to make this short video. And please subscribe. Please. If you'd want to see other videos like this where I can maybe give a more established argument, please let me know, because I'd love to do it again. And I would be glad to listen to your recommendations. So anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.
Sweet baby raised. Baby raised. Sweet baby raised. Baby raised. Baby raised. Baby raised.